take a few weeks. I'd love to learn how to do it, just in case I ever have to.
Yeah, I think
We
everybody
should probably all do that.
I will say though, it's not always the same. It's not
Well,
consistent.
that's part of what's trouble, or I think that's where a lot of the problems happen, is that people don't leave it the way that they found it, usually, including myself.
Yeah, it was different tonight than it was today at noon.
This afternoon, exactly. So,
But also sometimes if like Josh Schwartz comes in, and I can just say, cause I see this happen, he comes in and hooks his computer up, which of course is fine. And then even if you re-hook up the computer, it won't show PC in the input button.
okay, so it
then you need
defaults
to
back
know
to
which
something different in the
HDMI,
settings.
you know, link
Okay.
push.
Well,
So,
at noon today, it was logged in with, as Kurt Lindbergh, who just showed up to the meeting.
that's, yes, I'm glad Kurt's there.
Jeez, Kurt.
Kurt almost opens the meeting after hearing from the public.
So I guess at 6:30, you wanna start?
Recording in progress.
We'll call the meeting to order. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? And I do have one.
I think there were a couple of things.
Go ahead.
Well, for one, I didn't know if we wanted a round table.
Yes, we should add,
And I wasn't sure where you would want to add that in the event that
after the
we
work,
wanted to.
why don't we do the roundtable and the town administrator's report after the work plan?
Sounds good. And then the Green Mountain Stage Race, festival permit,
Yes? It is.
can that be on the consent agenda, or do we need, is there,
I'm fine with it on there, just we need to make it clear that we're not only approving the festival permit, but also giving them the use of the public right-of-way. Consent to use the public right-of-way for the race. So there's two different issues.
Yeah, and I didn't know if like there could be a discussion. I mean, he emailed me because I asked him to fill out the public festival permit, and it
Let's keep it on the agenda.
let's keep it on, yeah, it sounds like it's vague enough. And then wasn't there a, Mad Events?
Yes, the Mad Events liquor license renewal, they were here 3 years ago and have been here. It's, according to our policy, they don't need to be here in person. So, and that was submitted in the last couple of days.
it was just today they came in and paid. So Jen asked us to add it.
Add it to the consent agenda? Okay?
Pull the minutes from the consent agenda,
You wanna pull the minutes?
please.
Okay, so we'll do those after, before the consent agenda. Anything else? Nope, okay. Public forum, is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing none, let's start the business items. We have the Conservation Commission has 2 items that they requested to be on the agenda. And for a little bit of background, Fairground, Kurt, you wanna come up? Sure. So just to remind folks, the town was gifted the fairgrounds property, which includes about a 16-acre open meadow that has historically been used as a fairground. And we can close those blinds.
No, it's coming from the upper
Oh,
window.
yeah.
I got a good spot.
And then about 112 acres, 115 acres of woodland and a floodplain field. Historically, Hadley Gaylord, the Gaylord farm is next door, has grazed cattle on the property. I think he has cut hay on the floodplain. He hadn't had cattle down there for a long time. And the property was given to the town unrestricted with landowner intent, a statement of intent, but it's not a binding intent because it's not subject to a conservation easement, of how they would like the property to be used. And and I'll let Kurt, you weigh in and correct me if I'm wrong. For the forest property and the floodplain, I think the intent was to manage it for ecological well-being, as probably as limited management as possible, favoring old growth characteristics of the forest. I think the floodplain is open. The initial conversations we've had is it would be good to continue to hay it until the Conservation Commission has a plan, which may or may not be returning it to a floodplain forest. They lately have been running goats down there to control knotweeds and other invasive. And the idea for the fairgrounds was that it be used for a community benefit based on public input. And ideas that have been kicked around include housing. There are some access issues. I've been enamored with the idea of its potential for future wastewater disposal if we go forward with a wastewater system. There is a hydrologic connection to one of the streams, so it only would be available for 2 mound systems, 6,500 gallons each, at a minimum, because we wouldn't get a direct discharge permit. There is some uncertainty about whether half of the field is suitable for an in-ground system with more capacity. Would be necessary to be more testing for that. So I'm going to turn it to you, Kurt, to talk about the work that the Conservation Commission has been done a ton of work on the forest property and coming up with some recommendations for management. There has been no real conversation about the fairgrounds in any real detail, with the exception of kind of informal conversations that yes, it would be good to allow Hadley to continue to graze that because it would keep invasives away, keep it down. It is a value to the town of having an open field up there, we think. But you know, that hasn't been a select board decision. One of the problems though has been the stream is not fenced off from the field, and cows do get into the stream. There's a stream that runs behind the old fairgrounds and drops into the Mad River, a little waterfall right next to the LaRue swim hole. And just for context, the big rock on the other side of the river from the LaRue swim hole, that is on this property. And some of the Conservation Commission's Gail has done some research, and there might be some grant funding available for fencing, but that would require a long-term 10-year commitment to a farmer to allow it to be grazed. I've talked to Hadley about the desire to get the cows out of the stream, and you know, his concern he raised is he's reluctant to put any money into fencing if he thinks it might be taken away from him in 6 months or a year, and would want some kind of ongoing commitment. I told Hadley we'd like to sit down with him soon, and Phil Huffman from the Conservation Commission and I are tentatively scheduled to talk to him next week. So this is an opportunity to kind of get some sense from the select board as far as where we should be going with the fairgrounds. And as Kurt's question was, if we develop a plan for the property, is it the entire property, or are we just doing kind of the Woo Ledges expansion of the forest and the floodplain and keeping the fairgrounds out? Does that sum it up as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, and we're at the point now, after having completed all the studies of the new land, an ecological assessment, a forest stand assessment, a trail evaluation, and actually bird habitat. So that's all done. So what we want to turn our attention to now is developing a long-term management plan for the parcel that'll look at preserving its ecological integrity, thinking about trail connections between this new property and Woo Ledges, trail access, which has been an issue at Woo Ledges for a long time. And we've identified 2 potential consultants to help develop the management plan with us. One is, you may know of, he's the former Commissioner of Forest Parks and Recreation. His name is Michael Snyder. And then another fella. And so we're putting together an RFP now to describe the work we want done. And before
Did Michael say he wasn't interested?
Yes,
Oh.
he did.
He did,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, yeah. We've spoken with him. That'd be great. So in the RFP, we need to describe the property that would be covered by this management plan. And the sense I've gotten from conversations previously with the Select Board is that the Conservation Commission would take responsibility for the parcel and its stewardship, except for the actual fairgrounds pasture. Because as Brian noted, it's uncertain, what its future use will be. So it's hard to develop a management plan if you can't answer that question. So before going ahead with the RFP, I just wanted to confirm that with you. And also, I think, emphasize the importance of, getting the cows out of the wetlands. Not only is there a stream there, but there's considerable wetlands up from the stream, and the cattle are all over that. So, from a water quality and ecological stewardship of that property, I think we have a responsibility to take care of that issue. And it's also one of the donors' clear requests to the town.
Well, it's a state law too.
That
Yes.
was my next question.
It is.
Is what are our new, actual legal,
Right.
obligations
Yeah, it's illegal.
as the town owner, as the owner?
Right. So I just wanted to just confirm that kind of understanding before going ahead. That said, as Brian mentioned, there still needs to be attention to that property, and how it can be managed, especially to prevent the incursion of additional invasive species. So, I think grazing is an appropriate way, in this next phase. But for whatever happens next, that issue will require some attention by the town.
Anybody,
Would it be possible to include the meadow in the kind of discussion in the RFP report? And, flag the uncertainty and because there'll be a border, obviously, but the invasives will hop from one side to the other, and it's part of the whole thing. So looking at it holistically, it might not be part of the management actual plan, but just to have it be considered as part of it, as part of the issue.
Yeah. Well, the ecological studies have included
Okay.
that pasture. But in terms of developing a management plan, I don't know what we'd be managing, and part of the process is to present our ideas for public input. And if there isn't, some clarity about the future use of that land, I don't know what we'd get, or whether we'd be raising issues that can't be dealt with at that point. And the Conservation Commission would not likely be responsible for stewarding
Okay, yeah, that'll
Yeah.
that property too.
I think we also potentially set a public expectation, if it is included in the plan, that it's gonna stay
Something
as it
happen.
is or stay undeveloped, and I personally, I wanna keep our options open.
For sure.
very much so,
Yeah.
for, as you said, housing, wastewater, and stuff we may not have thought of yet. I do have having said that, I do have a question. I think the public benefit of connecting a trail system over to Blue Ledges would be tremendous.
Yes.
And do we know enough, would that run right through the middle of the fairgrounds, or is there a way to kind of route it around a potential future development?
We've had a fella from VLT who's kind of our partner in planning the trail part of it, and he's identified some routes that do provide some connection that avoid kind of crossing
Kind of
the
skirt
pasture.
the edge of it or something?
Right.
although I think that should be an option too. I mean, I go up to Blue Ledges fairly often, and almost always from to park at the Catholic Church.
Right.
And I've thought for a while it'd be great to approach them to see if that might be a trailhead. There is a little farm road that goes up to the fairgrounds, but it would be expensive to really develop as a permanent access, and it'd be great to be able to have a few parking spaces down below.
Yeah, the Waitsfield Children's Center kids always used to go up there until the prior owner took ownership, and then they said to stop, and then now that the town is back I think it would be nice to clarify.
My understanding, the owner did not want to say no, but had an attorney who was
Yes.
very nervous.
The only, I think, potential conservation use that we've identified for that pasture is if there's a need for parking. If we can't get parking on the Catholic Church property, then we may want to think about, a little road up there to a few places. Because parking for wool edges is a real,
Yeah.
There's often,
Pinch
there's
point.
often no spaces.
exactly.
And, if the property were fenced in, it could be skirt the edge of the fencing and have a trail on the edge of the field.
Right, right.
So, how do you feel about the public process? Because I think the letter of intent, of owner's intent was pretty clear. They wanted there to be a robust public process. And do you think it would kind of take away from the focus on the ecological values and recreational opportunities for the Wool Edges property if we had this? And what about this fairgrounds? Any ideas about what a good public use, a use that would benefit the public would be for that as part of that discussion?
We could, and I think especially if it was done in conjunction with the select board.
Yeah, I guess that's exactly what I was getting at,
Yeah.
that it all goes together in the end.
Yeah, because I
With
mean,
the
we will
public process.
definitely want to do that, and we also are planning some educational events. So the residents are, aware and informed about the specialness, and unique characteristics of this property.
And it was not, one of the champion trees.
No, I don't think so, but it's been measured now.
Formally, not just by us?
Yeah, Kate, the forester from the Vermont Land Trust and I went out there last week.
What kind of tree is up there?
It's a white pine, and it's approximately 140 feet high, circumference of 14 feet. And then there's another measurement they do for the champion trees is the canopy diameter.
But it came up short.
I don't know yet. I haven't heard back from Caitlin yet. But
14 feet
diameter
on the stump,
at 4 at chest height.
breast height, right?
Yeah, it's a big tree. It's a very big tree. Yeah.
So how does it change the process to say, yeah, I mean, we want to include the fairgrounds, the select board would be committed to participating, and it might be just that we deal with access issues and say that the fairgrounds is, held in reserve for
Yep.
for future decisions.
And then invite public input on potential uses and ideas.
I think that would be good.
Can I ask a question? And we talked about it, just in terms of best practice for the fairground, the spot that we want to leave open off a management plan. Is there anything we need to do, the Hadley cows, I know we've identified, and I think we have a potential path forward or a decision for the select board to make. But anything else that's been identified in terms of what we should do best practice, even wanting to keep it open, I think it speaks to what David said, and not necessarily having to be part of the RFP, but making sure that we are following, again, best practice for the field.
You went on mute.
Yeah, sorry, to be smart, wise, and ecologically sound.
And also like fulfill our legal obligations to keep cattle out of. It sounds like we have legal obligations I was unaware of, which I mean makes sense.
And you might find out more information in your meeting about what the estimated cost and time.
Yeah. And I guess just the idea of if we were to pursue this grant opportunity, that definitely locks up the field for a decade.
Or a decade. Also, how long has it taken to get like wastewater things? I mean, I feel like if
Hey.
no,
Really fast.
I'm sorry, Todd. No, I didn't mean mean to cast aspersions. I just meant that if we punt on 10 years for 3 years, then if we had just agreed to it at the outset, but I don't know. I don't know what the sort of the stipulations of the grant are, but
And the
if we don't
intermediate,
think that we'd be building anything for 10 years, it might be worth looking at. I don't know. I
and the
also,
intermediate
you know,
solution is
I'm open
without
to other things.
without the grant, how much of a commitment does he need to
Yeah.
make it worthwhile to fence it?
Well, and is there a way to work in either a commitment with Hadley or a grant that if we, you know, if we end up needing it for housing or wastewater, is there a way to pay off that remaining balance or to end the contract in a
Yeah.
respectful, you know, contracted way? And I imagine the answer is yes.
Yeah, or if the town decides that we want grazing up there to prevent invasives and we're the landlord, you know, we could help grant or not, depending on what the estimate is.
Yeah, but
Um,
it seems like cost of fencing, we could find another way to pay for it rather than tie up the property
Yeah.
for 10 years.
I mean,
That's what I'm
all
saying.
the fencing he has up there now, which is on the Route 100 edge of the field, down to the waterfall, is just electric wire on cedar posts, so it's not anything too elaborate.
Is that effective?
Yeah,
It can be, I think, well. yeah,
I rubbed
we-
against it once.
if it's maintained, yeah.
Yeah,
It kept me away.
you know, we've run into this on our property with, you just need sometimes a bigger charger, or a bigger solar panel to make it even more live, and
Yeah.
also managing what kinds of cows are up there, the teenagers are the worst.
Well, if there's a real strong desire to get to the water, and there's an electric fence, they will go.
Well, when my different conversations with Hadley, we did say, if you're gonna use it, you're gonna need to have a water supply. And he said, you know, his home property is probably close enough to be able to run something up from the farm for a tank.
Yeah.
So I guess we're settling on, yes, let's include it as a question mark for public use, but not, you know,
There doesn't need to be a management plan about it, because it'll be reserved, right?
yeah, yeah. And if it's just reserved and available for agriculture, for grazing, and we fence it in and somebody fences it in, and, you know, the management plan is to keep cows out of the stream. It's all makes sense.
But we're saying include it, not so much in the management plan, but in the public outreach, public engagement process.
Yeah,
Like that.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I.
So not as part of the RFP, but part of the public conversation?
Well, I think it could be part of the RFP, just saying that that there's uncertainty and it's likely going to be held in reserve and made available for potential future uses. But we should talk about access, trail access.
Okay,
Makes sense to me.
Makes sense.
works for me.
Okay,
Does that work for you?
great. Yep, thank you.
Fred, you look like you're really struggling.
Yeah, do you want to
You're
slide over?
sunburned.
I'll make room for you.
Thank you.
It is bright.
On the screen, you couldn't even see Fred. He's literally like in so much light, he was invisible.
You're just glowing.
It's
You're
just
radiant.
glowing, yes.
Glowing. That isn't often said.
So we're good on that?
Yeah,
I'm gonna turn it to you to set up the ash borer conversation. York, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. So the ash borer, it was brought to, we actually had it as part of a select board meeting a month or two ago. And I can't see you, so let me know if you're saying something, because I'm looking now at my screen. Essentially, if you remember, Charlie Hosford brought a proposal that he had submitted during the ARPA funds. Just basically really identifying the ash trees along Main Street, but also the number of ash trees throughout town in our town right away. And essentially, the time has come where we probably need to come up with a plan. And I think Brian said, stop punting the can down the road. It's time to probably acknowledge that can and do something about it. If I'm wrong about that, Brian, I apologize. And so Kurt, can speak to their last meeting and a visit they had, from Caitlin, I don't remember that last name. But in terms of, I have reached out to Kurt and asked if there was a way to begin discussions of ash and the beetle, and a plan to move forward, and I think we're trying to get some direction from the select board of the best way to move forward, and maybe creating a meeting, a task force with relevant internal and external stakeholders, just begin the process of saying, what are the different ways to move forward? And with that, if that's okay, Brian, I'll, let Kurt speak to his meeting.
Right. Yeah, after York reached out to me, I arranged for the Caitlin Cusack, the local forester from the Vermont Land Trust, to speak to different kind of treatment options for emerald ash borer at our last meeting. And she's very knowledgeable about this subject. She talked about where the biological controls research stands. She talked about the use of insecticides for treatment of ash trees as being very effective, and what it takes and kind of what it costs. The options for studying ash trees in town, because there may be some that are more resistant to emerald ash borer than others. They call that lingering ash, and then collecting seeds, from those trees for future use, and several other kind of options. So, there's a lot of thought has been given to this subject, and I think it's more detailed than we need to start taking the trees down. We'll likely have to do some of that, but I think we ought to be looking at these other options within the town. So the Conservation Commission kind of suggested that a meeting be arranged with the tree board and someone from the select board and someone from the Conservation Commission with Caitlin Cusack, just to kind of review all these options and begin discussions about what the possibilities are. I asked her what some of the cost implications are for treatment, and she said it's $2 to $3 per diameter inch every 3 years. So for a foot diameter tree, that's $120 to $136 every 3 years. Is what the Land Trust is doing on their land. The Forest Service does it every 5 years. So,
Is this the inoculation?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
They bought, sorry Kurt, they bought, I think, the device basically to do it, so we, with their help, correct me if I'm wrong, Kurt, we talked about this at another meeting we had at American Flatbread. Essentially, because of Vermont Land Trust, we would be able to do it for cost of just what you inoculate the tree with. So if you were to reach out and have it done, it would be a lot more expensive.
Agreed, because I am doing that to my beautiful old ash tree. I was like, wow, that's a great deal.
Well, it was
I
tended.
had one done on my property this morning,
Did you?
yeah, from Whitney. And it's not that cheap, but
Nope.
That could be the
That's
difference
good to know that
between
that's the option.
doing 1,000 of them versus
Yeah.
doing one.
Were you about to say there's a
Yeah, there's a company that does kind of more large scale projects, and that's where Caitlin got her figure from. That's if you have a professional do it. Caitlin said if on town forest property, she would give us access to the equipment that the land trust uses. We would have to have a trained town applicator use it, and then buy the chemical, which is not terribly expensive. So there's a lot of options.
I was kind of thinking we were gonna head, East Montpelier just went through, had several hundred of their ash trees cut down. They went like, let's get rid of them. I thought we were heading in that direction, but I've had a forester, she's Mike Snyder on my property, and I said, I'm gonna take these ash trees down. He goes, I wouldn't, don't do it yet. I'd hold off on that. And then I had Marilyn Whitney look at 2 ash trees today that are pretty sizable. One of them would fall on my cars and the other one would fall on my tractor shed. And just said, want to give me a price? I want to get ahead of this. And her response was, after talking to Adam, was, don't do it yet. They look pretty healthy, monitor it, wait and see. They might not, something could turn up in the future, so they suggested holding off.
Yeah, there's a lot of research being done,
Yeah.
especially on the biological controls too, with wasps, I guess. Some of that's being done in New Hampshire and Michigan and places like that.
Actually, if you hike up from Tucker Hill Road through the wildlife management area over to the Howe Block, to the Enchanted Forest in Dana Hill, there's these little things on trees that I asked a forester friend what they were, and he didn't know, and he did research and found out that it's biological control for glass border here in Facein, where they're doing research on it. So,
Forest Parks and Recreation, or?
yeah, it's on a wildlife management area parcel, which is
Okay.
managed by FPR.
Mhm.
So there is a lot going on.
Yeah, I think it deserves some careful research and consideration, for sure.
So what do folks think? Do we want to move forward on an ash
That
border
meeting, yeah.
task force?
Yeah.
Yes.
we need
Makes
to-
sense to me.
What do you think the makeup? 2 members select board, 2 members conservation commission, tree board? Tree board, it's my recollection, is only 2 members as it stands. It's Charlie Hosford and Vince Gothier.
Yeah, I think that, and York.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that'd be a good start, and then we can all get educated and then talk about what a good process would be to develop, a thoughtful plan.
Do we know how, because I very much like planning for the long term when we have the luxury of time to plan. Do we have the luxury of that time? It sounds like we might. I just want to make sure that we're not.
I really don't know.
yeah.
It's a
Okay.
bit of a gamble.
Okay.
I mean, we'll know when they're here, we'll know it's a problem and if we have to move.
We'd have to move fast.
Yeah.
And I think the plan with this meeting would be sooner than later. I mean, I would
Yeah.
love to plan by, there's no reason to even go past September, maybe even July or August. So, and then we can act as fast as we need to, or, it's about coming up with a process. And I think we can do that. The only other person we mentioned in a meeting would be, if you'd want to include Whitney Tree Service, is just another very knowledgeable external stakeholder. But that's the only person I can think of that may be a relevant stakeholder.
The other thing is that, that's what he does professionally. I think
Yeah.
asking him to volunteer a significant amount of his time is a significant ask. I just want to put that out there. I know we're in the habit of relying a lot on volunteer effort, but I don't want to make any assumptions that we can just ask Adam
Yeah,
Whitney
we
to drop in and that
I-
we'll
I
have the
agree.
time.
Contingent
I-
on
I
his
just-
interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a
And it-
potential conflict, and
Yep.
he may not want to do it because it would preclude him from getting any of the work
Yep.
down the road if he were on the committee.
Yep.
Although, I
If
think
we,
if
if we had
could-
like if this first was an educational meeting,
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was speaking about, was the educational meeting. I would not want him on a task force probably, but and Larissa, I agree with your
Yep.
point in terms of a task force. In terms of an educational meeting, inviting him to it, I don't think there'd be a huge conflict, although Chach, I think you bring up a really good point.
and Forest Parks and Recreation has resources and have met with other towns on the same issue.
Are there other Waitsfield-based tree operations that we could reach out to, so there wasn't just asking one person? Can't remember where the other.
Potters.
According to Charlie Hosford, there's not,
Okay.
but he may be incorrect.
Eric Potter?
But that's a
Yeah,
good, that's
I
good.
heard that he's not doing it anymore.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Eric Potter?
I haven't seen him lately.
No.
Yeah, my understanding is not. I'm just looking for direction. I'm not saying, I don't feel one way or the other, really, just mentioning a name. And if you guys have other thoughts, Brian, if you want me to reach out to whoever you just said, I'm happy to try to find some contacts for a meeting and then do a doodle calendar and come up with a plan based around Caitlin's plan, really.
Though
Or
he
a
would be
calendar.
knowledgeable.
Eric?
Potter would be knowledgeable, even though he's not professionally doing it at the moment.
We can see, yeah. Anybody eager to step up from the select board?
If it's soon, I can help. If it's
Yeah, you have.
later, I
time.
can't.
Yeah.
I can identify an ash tree.
Okay. And who were you thinking might
I
be
don't
from the
know yet.
Conservation Commission?
I don't know yet, but we have 2 foresters on the
Yeah, I
Conservation
know.
Commission, so
Oh, how
I'll,
unfortunate.
right, so I'll come up with names.
Okay. So you wanna, York, you wanna move ahead with that?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm on mute. Yeah, I'm just taking notes. Yep, that's good.
You-
Good.
do you
Yeah,
need a
Fred, I'd be
motion?
curious, I'd like to attend the first meeting, I might not be there for the whole time.
Yeah, Larissa, you could be unofficial.
Ex officio.
Okay.
And reach out to
Yeah.
Charlie.
It's a
Yeah, so
prestigious
did we
position.
say who in the select board would like to be included besides Brian? I missed
No,
that, I'm sorry.
Fred and David.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
but how's
Thanks,
knotweed going? How are they?
We've got the best crew of interns ever. They're just
Oh,
amazing.
great.
Yeah,
You
They were
said that
pretty
last
super
year.
last year, so
Yeah, they
they've
get-
got a high bar.
They're better every year, and there's
Wow.
more and more competition to get this summer position, you know,
Oh, wow.
among the UVM students.
Huh,
We had 35 students apply for these slots.
Wow,
It's a nice place to be.
It is, so,
that's awesome.
so yeah, it's going really well.
great.
And I'll share, I think Kurt said that some of them have said it's the best summer they've ever had in their whole life already.
Only knotweed.
Yeah.
Living the dream.
Are they similarly
They're
going
bottle
to be-
areas, you know?
Are they similarly going to be doing those sort of days where they let folks know that there's a time and a place they can come and volunteer and help out, like learn best practices? Because I thought that was really cool last year. I don't know if that's still a thing, but I
Yeah.
appreciated being able to actually.
Yeah, each of them has a separate project, you know, in addition to working on the team, and one of them is gonna work, 2 of them are gonna work with the invasive species ecologist at UVM to put together kind of a valley-wide workshop.
You wanna just say
Great.
quickly for the minutes how people can find out to get on your email list, for not,
Yeah,
Thursdays?
for people in the valley, and I guess especially in Waitsfield, I've got an email distribution list that updates everyone on activities in the valley and in Waitsfield. And where on Thursday, we're gonna be working with kind of community volunteers and the interns. And so folks can just email me at wcclindberg, LINDBERG@gmail.com, or call me at 609-647-9832.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thanks, David.
Great.
So thanks for your time,
Yeah.
folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt.
Okay.
Next item is to approve a contract for reappraisal with Nimerick. The listers put out an RFP a while ago, I believe, months ago, and received one bid for, I think it was 134,000 plus or minus, York? I don't have it. on my computer.
137,400,
Then they can't start until 2028.
correct,
We have about,
July 2028.
and in the end of the year, we had 124,000 in our reserve fund, and I think we put another 5 or something into it.
10.
And So we're good, especially not starting this year.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's actually 5,725 per month, and it doesn't end till June 2030, so we're ahead of the game fiscally.
their contract structure is the 5,700 whatever a month. I think we could pay them over that, it'd take them 2 years to do
Yeah.
the reappraisal.
Any questions? We have been told by the state that we're,
I think we should do that.
yes.
Yes, I did have a question that I don't think should make a difference in terms of whether or not we accept this, but I think might be, I'm just curious. The expenses allocated to the town, it's page 16.
Yep, yep.
I was curious about what purchase of computer hardware and software and necessary licenses and manuals, because I mean, that could be non-trivial depending on how specialized that is. And I don't know, but it would be, especially since this is in a while, it might be worth finding out what we anticipate that being. If anything, it's possible that we already have what we need, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's NEMREC, and I don't know Larissa, but I had 4 cons down. Just things that to note, and that is one of them, and I think that's a valid question.
Yeah, maybe ask for some clarification on what's required by that paragraph.
Yep, I can reach out to them and do that. The other, I think the other main, and I shouldn't say I'm overly concerned, they did our reappraisal in the past, I don't know, 10 years ago, don't quote me on that. There was a significant workload for the listers in the contract, and just thought I'd note that do they have capacity to take on a pretty significant amount of work in the contract, as the contract states.
The listers
And
have
then-
recommended that we approve this though, right?
That's correct. Well,
That was gonna be my next question.
yeah, I shouldn't say that I got that formal recommendation. I talked to Charlie Goodman twice, and he said, basically, we need to do this. I would not say that I got a formal recommendation that I'm aware of. But that is a valid question.
In the lead up time to when the contract actually starts, and as the town is getting ready and the listers are getting ready, that can be part of the discussion, is what more do they need? And are they
Yeah,
ready?
because we have a pretty significant on-ramp at this point. So if there are additional resources are
The only
necessary.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I can't see anyone, so I'm guessing. Also, the final note is that if there's any increase in parcel counts, which I think will happen, that also will increase costs.
Yeah, pretty modestly
It's-
though. I mean, it's,
I would
Like
think so.
$100 per,
yeah, $100
Additional
per
parcel?
additional parcel.
Yeah, that's right.
And we've been.
I just wanna make sure that it was all on the table.
Mhm.
Subdivisions have been a few lots, a couple dozen lots a year is a lot of subdivision in town lately.
Yeah, so we wouldn't expect hundreds
Yeah.
of new parcels. I had a question that I don't think would cause us to not approve this, but I would like to understand, particularly if we have a long lead time to when they start. It's just, for us, I think as a select board, and maybe with the education of the listers, just to understand the process better. It sounds like they use this replacement cost to determine the value of the buildings, but then adjust it somehow for the age of the buildings and stuff. And I just wonder, with the housing stock that's in some cases 200 years old or more, like, how do they do that? Like, if you were valuing a 200-year-old house in the valley, the replacement cost would be orders of magnitude more than it's worth today. And I just want to make sure we don't set ourselves up for a crazy result that's going to result in all kinds of grievances. And oh my God, they've obviously dealt with this before, like given all the towns they've assessed in Vermont, so it's not a new issue. I'm sure they have a good answer. It's just one we should understand before we dive into it, in my view.
So do we wanna put it on hold to ask a few more questions? Or
I would,
Not,
to go ahead?
work out any questions in the interim.
Yeah.
yeah, as we negotiate the contract.
So,
Yeah.
okay, let's accept the proposal with, work out the details before we sign the dotted line.
One thing I'd be curious about is there's gonna be an assessment for the property owner on their view. Like if you have a beautiful view of the mountain range, is there an assessment for that? I believe some towns do. I was curious
Typically,
if
that's a-
Waitsfield does. Or would.
I'd be surprised if they didn't. That's usually a criteria in the value of the land. Like they have some kind of scoring system for the value.
I
of the
believe we
land.
do.
And they did our last one, right?
That's correct, and I believe we do have that.
Maybe we could
That's
also just
like,
take a look at their
a
last
better
one. I bet
site
it will
equals
be-
a higher assessed value.
I bet it will be pretty similar.
But it's a good question to ask them.
I'd be just curious if
Understand
that-
those criteria.
So I'm trying to take notes and maybe not being there. Would you guys mind just going through the questions that we have?
No, let's
One is
please,
the cost
let's
of the
recap.
equipment that Larissa brought up. Would you guys mind going over the others so I can make sure I have them correctly?
Yeah, I had a question just on their methodology and how they adjust the replacement cost methodology they use to determine the value of the buildings, how they adjust that for very old buildings, of which we have a lot in town.
And then just confirming that there's a view component. Or, I don't know if there's a better way to put that.
But are we
Right.
holding off on getting a formal proposal, or are we asking them for that along with these questions? We don't have a thing to sign now, right?
Not to my knowledge,
Yeah.
but to me, we want to get ourselves on their list as soon as we can.
Yeah,
and
that's-
get
that's, I guess,
lock in that
That's my point.
June 28 start date or whenever it is.
July, yeah.
Most definitely.
How about-
Especially since we've had so many firmly worded letters from the state.
Yeah,
My understanding is the last letter that we did receive was a letter that they sent to everyone. Like not that we shouldn't take it seriously, but, well, in the end, we should take it seriously. So I guess it doesn't really matter if it's a form letter.
Well, that is the third one that we got from the state that I'm aware of.
Did they acknowledge our response to the
No.
second to last one, or is there?
I never received
Someone-
anything, at least that I saw, to the letter that we sent. That must have been over 2 months ago now.
So do you wanna accept the proposal pending clarifications?
I would so move.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Great, and speaking of property taxes, so now is the time of the year we would typically set our tax rate, but there's a bit of a glitch, a recent law change. And York, correct me if I'm wrong, but it used to be there was a formula for listers to assess the value of infrastructure, of poles and wires for electric utilities and telephone utilities. And I don't know what caused the change in the statute. My understanding is there might have been a lot of variance around the state. So now the state does the assessment and hands down that value to the town. And
Right.
so York, according to the state's assessment of our poles and wires in Waitsfield, the value went up quite a bit, right?
Well, there's
Like orders of magnitude.
So it's utilities and whatnot, and I'm not, and I spent quite some time talking to Mary Jane and Charlie Goodman about this. Mary Jane and Charlie were also semi-confused, honestly. There may be 5 organizations or companies that the state took over, Act 144. This is the first year that it went into effect. I'll add that I've done some research, and there are a lot of towns dealing with the same questions we have. One of the utilities, and Mary Jane and Charlie aren't even sure actually what the company is or does. Their best guess is that they own the lines. The valuation before, and don't quote me on these numbers, was in the thousands, as in like $7,000 last year. It jumped by $1 to $5 million. I thought it jumped by about 1.5 million. Charlie thought it jumped by 5 million.
Wait, $1 to $5 million was the range of increases?
Yeah, well, no, it was 7,000, and now it's either 1.5 million or 5 million. And I'm not in the office, so I
The
haven't.
orders of magnitude.
Yeah, a lot. So the listers denied it. And don't quote me on the word denied, and I can look at my notes to say specifically, but, and now there's a process that it can go through where the utility can, seek clarity on why the value changed so much, et cetera. What matters here, because the process has started, is we can stall even till the end of August, according to Sandy, to come up with the tax rate. Based on the grand list, but there's a lot of questions of whether we'll actually hear anything about what the state decides the value is, if they're gonna change it or keep it the same. The obvious point is if it's $1.5 million or 5 million, whatever the grand list looks like right now, that would set a certain tax rate, based on that grand list. If that changed down to, let's say, down to what it was at 7,000, let's pretend there was a huge mistake and they're like, oh yeah, we put this, the decimal in the wrong spot. And we set the rate at whatever the grand list is now, then it would be way too high. If we assumed, this is a mistake, we're gonna set it, it could be too low. So the question is, do we wanna stall and see if we can get some more clarity on what that number might be? Or maybe just make our best guess and assume the grand list is gonna remain as is and just set a tax rate based on that.
Can you remind me of the total grand list
Yeah,
last year?
if I make a
Yeah.
clarifying comment and then speak directly to
Please,
that.
Josh.
I think the grand list value that we based the, tax rate in the budget planning didn't include this huge increase, right?
Yeah.
It was,
That's for sure.
we assumed a modest point, I don't know, 1/3 of a percent or some small increase in line with historical standards, or historical averages. So it didn't include that. The grand list is just under 400 million. Is that right? Times 2. Yeah, 395 million is what we assumed for a grand list value. If it went up by, let's see, if that value went up by $1 million, it would be another like $5,000 or $6,000 of tax revenue. So if it's, $5 million, it would be 5 times that amount, $30,000 of tax revenue. So that doesn't seem like a crazy, like, oh my God,
Throw the numbers out the window.
either the town's getting screwed or we're screwing someone else. Either way, to be honest.
I agree.
So, to me, I would be inclined to kind of push ahead as is based on the numbers we have. The numbers we have don't include that increase. If the utility properties go, that value goes way up, we're gonna collect additional tax revenue from them. We're not necessarily gonna impact all the other
I agree with that.
taxpayers.
Yeah, I was.
That was
thinking
gonna be
the
my
same
next
thing.
question, was sort of what are the taxpayer impacts of
Yeah, I
this?
think realistically, if we knew that it's really $5 million instead of what we've assumed, and we were gonna collect more revenue from that one owner, and you spread that across, deducted that from all the other property tax owners, it would be a couple bucks a year on a $300,000 house, the way we've set up our budgets. It's not nothing, but I think on a tax bill of, $1,766 on a $300,000 home, a $2 difference. I don't think that's worth kind of reducing the rate, hoping that maybe we do get this windfall from the utilities. To me, I would kind of leave it as is. If we get a windfall, it's gonna be paid for from one property owner, this utility poles and lines owner, not everybody else. So it doesn't feel like we are, sticking it to our property owners, which none of us want to do, or the vast majority of our residents in the community.
That was, when I talked to York about it, it was kind of the same place I landed, was it's not, and yeah, it would be a bigger concern to say, oh, great, we have a windfall, let's plug it in the number based on that, and then come up
And
short.
not get it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, we don't have a number tonight, so we do need to push it down the road a little bit, but, we could work, try to resolve it by the next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine moving forward. I just, Mary Jane and Charlie said it is different than any other years, at least in their memory. And it was worth bringing to select board to see which direction you wanted to go. I'm happy to try to get a number, to you guys for the next meeting in July.
Cool. And just clarifying, it said in the memo that your memo, York, that the state is kind of taking that away from the local listers, like they set the
That's correct.
value and that's final?
That's correct. I think, what did I call it? Act 144. It passed last year and it went into effect this year. And they were supposed to, they had all year to do it, but we just received it just a couple weeks ago, the valuation for those couple companies.
I also wonder, I mean, if this is something that a lot of towns are encountering for the first time now, I imagine the LCT may have some insight, maybe?
I mean, there's a path
I don't know.
forward. And I think they're moving forward with the listers. It's essentially, it's PVR appraisal, like you just go through these steps of questioning it. And I think that's the listers and the company mainly that do that. And I think that's going forward, or at least the utility's gonna have the option to move forward in that direction. And since it's the first time, I don't think any towns know really what's happening. And some people are saying you should apply pressure to VLCT to advocate for more transparency in the valuation process, just that I'm seeing in my research.
What I think I'm hearing is that either way, we don't have a number to work with tonight,
Yeah.
but that maybe next meeting, it's worth coming up with a number with the information that we do have and with the expectations that we've already set with the taxpayers.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that.
Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
I think that sums it up. Okay, so we'll move on to delinquent taxes. As York explained in his memo, we need to take action to approve our law firm that we've been using over the past several years, Stitzel, Page and Fletcher, to conduct tax sales for the town. York, do you have anything to?
No, not really. I mean, I guess we've done this, I don't know about every year, but in the past, Jen, as our delinquent tax collector, asked me to put this in 2 weeks ago, and I just didn't have enough information and didn't feel comfortable putting anything in the public sphere that maybe should not have been. And so I did not include the name or the property owner, and the law firm Stitzel Page agreed with that. So essentially all we're doing, and there's a recommended motion in the meeting packet in the town admin report, that Stitzel Page recommends that the select board passes for them to move forward in the process, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yes. Related question that's tangentially related, not so much to the motion itself, but is there a specific procedure or policy regarding tax sales, like when we push something to a tax sale?
That was gonna be my question too.
It's pretty well,
I do not know the answer to that personally.
pretty well spelled out in state law.
That's what I'm wondering. I'm just ignorant of the,
Yeah.
is it town policy or state or what, but.
I know, having sat through some Board of Civil Authority meetings on tax appeals, Jennifer does a really good job of really trying to get people to pay up. And our delinquent tax sale list has gotten a lot shorter over the
It
years.
certainly has, and we owe her.
Yeah.
It used to be over a page in the town report.
Yeah.
It was a fun page.
I know Warren had one a year or two ago. I'm not sure what the rules are.
And again, this property owner, and it's in the report, the town administrator report, but they, you know, they've been delinquent since 2016, but they have paid every year until I think 2023. And then and they did make some payments, I think, in 2023, but there have been no payments for 2024 property taxes.
I don't remember a tax sale in town. It's usually gets
Waitsfield hasn't
people's
had one for a
attention.
long time.
Yeah.
That was gonna be my, yeah. What does this look like when it happens, and when did it happen last?
But it's well
And-
spelled out and.
It's not an easy process, and the landowner has, you know, the opportunity to
rights.
pay up,
Several times over.
yeah.
Well, there are multiple other property owners in the same boat, except they are in conversation with at least Jen or or Stitzel, Page and Fletcher. So, and that's why, you know, if they come up with a plan, they come up with a payment plan, et cetera, that does not come to us. This is just one property owner that is not in communication with Stitzel, Page and Fletcher or Jen.
So just to clarify, there is some process and Jen decides whether those go on to a sale list, or do they come to us?
No, I think that's Stitzel, Page and Fletcher, is my understanding.
But
So the law firm makes the decision?
I think it does.
Who makes the decision?
I think that we
What
need,
is the,
Who makes the decision when a property that's in delinquency actually goes into the tax sale process?
we do.
I think the select board does.
Yeah,
Okay,
we do.
that
Yeah,
makes
so-
sense
so
to
they
me.
Oh,
need to
yeah,
come
yeah,
back
yeah.
to us.
We do, and then
Yeah.
we hire someone like this.
Great.
So we're not saying we're authorizing a particular tax sale. We're authorizing
correct.
the use of these attorneys to provide our legal advice for that process, in which case something will likely come before us in the near future.
And actually, Jen had brought this to them a few months ago, and they advised we wait till this point in the summer when, you know, the fiscal year is almost over, just to give them more time. So that's where the law firm comes in, is that they advised Jen and me to stall till June. But yes, the select board will be, I think, part of the conversation if we do not receive payment.
That makes sense to me, and I move to approve them to proceed with.
Okay, the motion to approve the use of Stitzel, Page and Fletcher to conduct the town's current tax sale process.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey,
Great. Moving along. I gotta get back up here. Is the Green Mountain Stage Race next? Sorry, I gotta find my agenda again.
Yes, the stage race is next on the
So
agenda.
again,
Think
it's a
so.
public festival permit and approval to use the public right-of-way for the race. We've done this for several years now, I think, since the beginning. This has been, York, we didn't see the festival permit until just recently. You followed up with Gary?
Yeah, I did,
It is-
yeah, and they did submit that, and it's the way it should be. He said he doesn't think he's ever done it before, which surprises me, cause it's, he thinks it's poorly named, and I'm like, well, I don't disagree with you, it is a little confusing, but if an X number of people gather, you know, that's what it's for. So he filled it out, somewhat hesitantly, and recommends that the select board comes up with a new name or a new process or a new permit form for something that would be more appropriate for an event like this, but he did it.
Well, I did look back at prior minutes, and we have approved a public festival permit and consent to use the right-of-way in the past. So this isn't new to him.
So maybe he was incorrect, cause when he sent this, you know, the two forms that he sent a couple weeks ago, I responded right away and said, and I sent him the link for the public festival permit, said, would you mind filling this in? And he didn't respond, and so I did it again, and he did it, and so we received it, and I think everything lines up well.
Any discussion, questions?
Move to approve the Green Mountain Stage Race application
And to grant consent?
and
for
grant
right-of-way?
consent to the use of our roads.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Great. So, I don't know if you have it, Josh.
Actually, I did take a copy, yeah.
Okay, this is a revised work plan, not heavily revised. At our last meeting, we started to walk through it, and York took notes in this
And
format.
Larissa,
What's that?
and Larissa.
And Larissa, yes, sorry. So maybe, who can remind us where we left off? We didn't make a whole lot of progress. It was a little bit rushed at the end of the meeting at about 8:45.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, no problem.
I don't think we talked about property maintenance. Does anybody remember talking about it? I don't.
No.
Yeah, I don't remember. No, I think that's correct.
So let's go through section by section. It's under town operations. Is there anything that stands out as unresolved?
Town operation.
I guess, I thought we talked about things that we put colors on, but I see less colors here than I remember last time. Is that possible?
I don't know.
Are you talking about priority when you say colors?
Yeah, I feel like we had discussed several of these, more than 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, there's
If we
five,
did, I missed it.
there's 5 things currently, with priority classifications. I think we discussed more than that, but, and that was, my understanding last meeting was that's how we were gonna keep track. If it was unprioritized, we still needed to talk about it, but now I see. I mean, it seems like most everything should kind of get, maybe there were sub things that I can't see here in this printout that we discussed. But it seems like we should, at some point, talk about everything and assign either a high, medium, or low priority and
If
a
it's,
person, a due date.
A timeline?
Yeah,
yeah, and if it's high priority, presumably, unless it's down the road, have the sub-tasks that
exactly.
would kind of build out what we're
And
trying to do.
if we think something's a low priority, then we don't need to talk about it quite as much right now.
Yeah, and Dave, there are like .gov emails under our cybersecurity, is down as a high priority.
We can't see that on our printout.
No,
right?
yeah, and that,
Correct.
and LEMP to the town website is down as a high priority. So there are a few subtasks that are down.
So I would also add that to kind of the list, is figure out how to get it printable or viewable by us so we can see the subtasks.
Okay.
One quick question, was the previous prioritized list that we were using for the last few years rolled into this?
Every single one. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And at the point that I discovered that the comments were not viewable in the shared link, I just piloted using a different feature. I added a text column
Yep.
and took some notes in the text column, and it basically blows up the row into a huge row and sort of duplicates some of the issues that we saw before.
Yeah.
So I think it would be visible but less, in any event.
Yeah, this is, I mean, if we wanna keep this simple and free or close to free, that thing about the more expensive version is we can make this all really workable so everyone has access where they're supposed to and where they're allowed to. Right now, we don't have that capability.
We're a little bit hamstrung.
York, just given your conversation with them this morning, can we get a summary reasonably soon about kind of the legality discussion that you had about the more active plan, and then also, what would it look like if we kept the current plan and do some of the things that we need to fix to be able to look at the subtasks and and have the select board able to view the files associated with the.
Yeah, and I don't have a great answer for that, just cause I'm using a half-hour meeting. Yes, I can try to figure that out and get more clarity of what we can do exactly with this plan. And if it will work for what we need.
And I'm happy to also, I know Larissa, you've been working on it, but if I can get a login, I'm happy to log on and play around.
Currently we have 3 logins,
Okay.
that we can, if you're talking on this site, monday.com.
Yeah,
3
I just-
people that can log in.
Hey, suggestion in this section is the, filling open positions that we prioritize the animal control officer. And do you get that on a future agenda, just to have
Discussion around how do we actually fill that? Do we need to change something on the outreach to try and fill that? Because it just feels like more issues are coming up and it's unfair to Fred.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of defaulting to you. Jennifer doesn't know what to do. It's not ideal.
Well, real quick, I don't mind doing it if I can handle it over the phone or just make a site visit. But when it comes to picking up animals and transporting them, that's a little bit more than what I care to do.
I think it's more than any volunteer is gonna wanna do. That's my concern, is like, we're never gonna get someone in this role as it's currently structured. And I don't mean to be pessimistic, it just
And the
feels like.
ordinance does not help, in my opinion.
Right, you have that note that you don't feel like it's workable.
We did increase the stipend.
Yeah,
But
after I
still.
resigned.
There was also, I don't know, I don't think that this fully addresses the animal control officer issue, but I think that it might be worth figuring out if we want to have an agreement with an MSPCA or the central, I know there was an email exchange about some cats and that at some point there was,
We should have a full-blown discussion
Yeah.
on this.
About our
Yeah.
ordinance and
Our
our,
ordinance
Yeah.
and ALC position
Yeah.
and everything.
yeah,
I think it goes beyond the scope of just
The position.
working this
Yeah,
plan right now.
yeah, I think it also falls under,
policies or.
yeah,
But I think if the whole purpose of this plan, if we elevate it and prioritize on the plan, then we can get it on an agenda for a
Yep.
future meeting
Yep.
and
Yep.
have that discussion.
yeah. So, yeah, so we have the domestic animal ordinance on the ordinance and policies category, which should also be a high priority.
Okay,
York, are you taking these priority notes and you'll change them in there?
I'm trying, yeah, I'm just trying to keep up with everyone.
So under budget and financing, we did talk about most of those. I think that we, yeah, the capital improvement plan is always a high priority, but it's not one until December, November, December. We have to update it every year. It's kind of like the budgeting process and town meeting. We did talk about infrastructure funding options. There wasn't consensus on the board about some of the ideas, but I think a majority of the folks felt that it was a high priority as we go into discussing wastewater and capital and town garage and all
Are
that.
there, York, if we're discussing some of these and there are subtasks which got filled in last time, can you just flag that, because we can't see it?
Yes, yeah, there's not under infrastructure funding, but yeah, for sure, and I'll see if I can figure out how to print that like that. But again, remember, you do have access to view it online, if you have your computers, you receive the link.
but you can't see the subtasks, I don't think.
Oh, I thought you could see the subtask, but not
You can
comments.
see the subtask, but
think
not
you
the
can.
comments or the
Yeah,
files.
we were seeing the subtask.
Yeah.
Oh, you are,
I
okay.
don't have it on my computer.
Yep, I'm gonna, because, yeah, I'm gonna.
Fred, did you have?
If infrastructure funding brainstorming is centering around whether or not we want a new town tax, let it be known that I'm very much against it.
Yeah, no, you made that clear.
That's,
And this may be symbolic, but I make the motion that that task be eliminated.
That what task be eliminated?
That we discuss
Infrastructure.
infrastructure funding?
Yep. If that
Well, so you're
task-
gonna eliminate any opportunities to discuss any other options other than the one that was proposed last time?
If we're talking about a lot tax, a new town tax, yes.
But that's not the only thing, that's not the only option though, is it? You were saying that there were other options.
I didn't say that.
Oh, there
You were
are-
saying bonds?
Bonding is gonna be a necessity, you know, we've never discussed impact fees as a community. But I also think that having a lot discussion to pay for infrastructure is a high priority, so I would vote to keep it on the list. But you made a motion, is there a second?
As I said, it was symbolic,
I know
but
that.
I am deathly against a new town tax.
Heard.
Do you recall what streamlining the budgetary system was?
So that was a, oh, sorry, go ahead, York.
No, go ahead. You got it.
So when we talked about all of the many reserve funds that exist and how cumbersome it is to keep track of all of the reserve funds, I believe that Steve at the last meeting said that as part of the upcoming audit process, they would be getting recommendations on how to streamline the reserve system. And I think, Brian, at some point that you mentioned that some of these reserve funds, we don't really know.
Yeah, I said that and I'll take this on, I wanna go through all of our town reports, our town meeting minutes, to find kind of the origin of all of our reserve funds, especially the ones that nobody knows really what they were for, and come up with a plan for a town meeting to consolidate and clarify. So I think it's a high priority before next town meeting, and I'd be glad to, I'm really interested in doing that.
Great.
And we have addition of EMX reserve, is that emergency? What does EMX stand for?
Oh, yeah, sorry, that was me and using my shorthand that not everybody understands, I'm sorry. Yes, that was what I was trying to say there.
Because we did, Fred and I actually recently had a conversation about this, that who knows what's gonna happen with FEMA? And FEMA is not an easy organization to deal with during recovery, that we might be on our own to a greater extent than we were in the past, and we should start planning for that, because
Yes.
we're gonna have more floods.
And less funding.
Yeah. We're heading in opposite directions.
All right, I added that as a high priority and I set some dates for that. Earmarking, like, saying Brian is gonna mostly take on that task, and I put November 1st to like mid-January. Does that sound about right, or would you like me,
No, that's good.
get that timeline? Okay.
I think one timeline that, did it get, oh, yes, it did already, I'm sorry. Pay no attention to me, I was just thinking that forming subcommittee for the town meeting prep was September and it's already in there.
Yep. And then if something gets done, like digital signatures for warrants, do we just move it to the bottom, or does it just stay there for a certain amount of time?
I think,
So,
sorry, go ahead, Larissa.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, I created an area that is for completed tasks that we can move it to. I think we have choices, basically.
Okay.
I think it's probably worth tracking our progress in some
Yeah.
fashion,
Yeah.
if for no other reason than it feels really good to cross something off the list.
Yeah.
But having it clutter
Could-
the
Agreed.
Could we have another column that just says completion date?
Yeah, that's what Larissa there's one, oh, I see what you mean. Actually, yeah, that's a good idea. I think we can do that.
so I can move to a different group, which is completed projects. So I just did that.
Thank you, Larissa.
Okay, good.
Is there anything else under budget and finance that should be a high priority?
Oh, I did have someone reach out to me about health insurance and just wanting to find a time to talk to York. It's somebody who is a Waitsfield resident, and works in the health insurance brokerage space, and she is a friend, I should disclose, but basically knows a little bit more about what is available than I think any layperson does. I would ask for permission to put her in touch with York, just to do some fact finding, not to sort of making decisions, but kind of get more information on what options there are. Just before it becomes her super busy season, which is October.
Fine by me.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great with me.
Super. I will do that.
So are the rest of those medium, cemetery trust and capital improvement, or low? Should we just, especially if they're low, should we just assign them so that we know that we've talked about them?
Yeah, like the cemetery trust, I definitely spent time talking about, but I think there's not all the answers that we need because the audit says that there's questions. And the cemetery trust, I think, disagrees with the audit.
And
no.
sometimes the overall priority might be low, but there might be a subtask that says we gotta get that done because people are waiting on us. So that might be a high subtask priority, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make
Like,
sense.
we gotta
So
get it
no,
off our plate
that's not vital.
so that someone else
Yeah.
has the information that they need.
Okay.
I'm adding that as a sub item, to the cemetery, just ensuring the audit and the trust are finally in a place of agreement.
So under property management, we said the town garage was high priority.
Critical.
Yeah, I think coming up with a maintenance plan for the town office is also something that we've been talking about for quite a while.
And that is in the works.
Yeah.
Steve, I handed that to Steve, because as you know, that's what he did in his previous life, was he owned a property management company. He was very excited about taking that on, and he's working on basically every part of it. It's just hard to identify. I think he might almost have a company that can redo the concrete floors, which have never really been done. We're struggling to find a painter for the varnish, for example, at the entrance and on both sides, but he is working on that, and he keeps me up to date on where it's at.
So that we sorry to keep belaboring this point, but under town office, if we could have, or somewhere, kind of the main things that are the concerns, whether it's in one subtask, or that might be a good place for it, to be honest, or in text or a comment. And then in the town garage, as another example of this, what is, within that critical priority, what is the next thing, subtask, that we need to do?
Yeah, I think it's an RFP to come up with a conceptual, very conceptual design and budget estimate in order to talk about taking it to the voters. I think we're all in agreement, and I want to, make sure of that we're gonna need a new town garage. And I think some of the past efforts to maybe add on to it is putting, good money after bad.
Yes. Agreed.
And I hate to say that, given what Warren's going through and what the costs they're running into, but
We have to explore it.
we have to do it.
Yep.
We have to.
Yep.
Our road crew does so much work in there. It sounds like I still need to physically get over there, but all of the stories that I hear impress upon me that it is urgent.
Oh, thanks for that specific, so that just needs to go on a future agenda and we start working on it, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, if you guys are ready, I've been kind of stalling on making a meeting with Charlie Goodman and Josh, just to sit down, lay out a process, just so we're aware, and then begin the RFP process to bring to the select board as soon as possible, or as soon as you would like to see it.
Yep, okay, I think it's a high priority.
Definitely a high priority, and I don't think on the RFP we need to start from scratch, because there was an RFP 2 years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem with that is that looked for
Understood.
final design.
Yeah, understood. So the wording
Yeah,
set us up.
yeah,
But I'm hoping that we can kind of reuse the template, and it's a good opportunity to kind of relook at did what we asked for in that RFP, is that still what we need? Change it from final design to conceptual or preliminary design, et cetera. But is this still what you guys want?
Yeah.
Would be the conversation to me with Charlie and Josh.
yeah, and they have a very, from the tour, they have a very clear idea of what's needed.
Yeah, so that may or may not have evolved over the last
Yeah.
2 or 3 years since we put
Yep.
that initial RFP out.
Yeah, I think that will be the plan, Josh. I think that, yes, that will be the plan, is to look at the RFP and then adapt it as needed with, given time has gone by, but to make sure it's not a full plan that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And I would hope we could have something that we could take to the voters, even if it's informational only, by town meeting day.
Okay, let me add that to the timeline. I agree, 100%.
Yeah, I don't know where to put the fire station, because I think there's a lot of needs there as well, but they're not as front and center to us as maybe they're likely going to be at some point.
I guess I would propose for something like that, putting medium or low and needs further discussion.
I'd put it at least medium.
Medium,
It can't
I
be a
would
low,
Medium,
yeah.
yeah, that's,
There's
I
some
wasn't trying to
issues.
say it was low, I was,
Yeah, that's okay.
if
I
it's
think
not
there's-
high, then
There is some issues.
And my understanding from having a meeting over there, talking to Tripp when he was chief, is that there might be some real serious code issues. I don't know how serious they are, but some code issues.
Code issues, and some point in time, we're gonna need to have a discussion about whether or not we need a ladder truck or access to a ladder truck, which will bring on the discussion of a new fire station.
Yeah,
So there's a discussion we need to have with Facein, obviously.
yeah.
So yeah, it's at least a medium, but it's not immediate.
so is the next thing, find a time to set up a meeting with the fire chief and,
You know, we typically do in the fall a joint meeting with Facein in the fire department, and we haven't done it for a while. I think my first year on the board, we actually had a joint meeting with Facein at the fire station with the chief and his crew. And that would be a good idea to do
Yeah.
again this September, October.
so making sure that's scheduled sometime in the next couple of months.
After the RFP is put out.
Yes,
Seriously, I think we should prioritize the
Yep.
town office. I totally agree that fire station has issues that we need to address. But from a prioritization standpoint, at least let's get the revised RFP out the door first would be my,
yeah,
For the town garage.
yeah.
Yep,
for the,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
for the
Yeah.
Oh,
garage.
That's why the
yeah,
rest is medium.
I'm medium, I'm good with medium on the fire station.
Great.
If we're good with that.
General Wade House, we seem to,
wasn't on the agenda tonight.
no, that's the first.
Well, you know,
I
it's
saw
not
them.
supposed to be.
I saw them scraping.
Oh,
Yes.
sweet.
Yeah,
So congratulations.
Yeah, maybe it should be on the agenda, all good things.
Yeah. The scraping,
We'll take one
Roof.
meeting off.
the roofer is supposed to be in the end of July, sometime start doing that. We just had a contractor come in and put stay mat down, so
oh, good.
so this ramp going up to the entrance is ADA compliant, as is the parking area, parking lot.
Oh, and Otis showed up one day unannounced, and we think they got the lift working, maybe, but I'm not there, so I can't say. But
So
Josh
they're
Schwartz
excellent at
said,
communication, it sounds.
they're horrible. Josh Schwartz said that the lift was in a different spot in the evening than it was in the morning, so, but I have not heard from them.
When he
And
said Otis showed up, I had the same reaction you did. Remembering Otis the dog.
I gave Otis a ride in my car.
Oh, the stories I could tell you. Yeah. So, the General White House, things are happening over there rapidly.
But it's gonna continue to be
And it's
a,
gonna-
a medium priority, because there's still work to be done.
Work to be done and expenses to,
Yeah.
resources to be allocated.
Yep, there's a new proposal, that will probably be on the agenda next month for the fire door and cellular, capabilities for the, fire alarm. And I'm just gonna leave that there.
A lot of good
Super.
work is being done over there.
If there's something
Yeah.
that you know needs to happen at some point, I think there's no harm in slapping it in a subtask and,
Yeah.
so that we all know without going back through the minutes or having to bother you, that we know that's something that needs to happen.
But what you're.
Yeah, again, like in terms of Monday.com, Dave, to your questions, this is like when I talk about siloing, like you can silo
Yep.
each like you could silo general White House maintenance and everyone in the general White House commission having access to that, for example. Which would just be really helpful for me.
Town office is medium, sorry, I just see that still gray. Is that right?
Which one did you say? Sorry.
Town office priority,
Town office,
and what?
the town office maintenance plan, right?
No, I think I
This-
changed that
Oh,
when we were talking earlier.
I
Let
don't
me
see it.
see.
Okay, yep, now I do, okay, sorry, I just hadn't refreshed. So now we're onto the fire hydrant, fairground.
Yeah, what's the status of the,
I've talked to Tripp about it twice, the previous fire chief, Tripp Johnson, and he said he was gonna try to talk to the new chief, Young, and see what we can do about it, and that's where it is. Since I'm not there, it's a little harder. I think once I get back, I'm gonna try to make an appointment, schedule a meeting with a few of them and see how I can help them move forward.
but we have the easement, we have landowner permission, and we have the money, right?
I can't speak to the money, except you told me that we have.
We the select board
we have it
allocated it,
allocated.
yeah.
Does it require any coordination with the road crew for, like, isn't there excavation or something of that sort that needs, maybe I don't understand what the bottleneck is.
The fire department said they've done it, and I think they just haven't gotten it, said they were gonna do it,
Gotcha.
it didn't happen yet.
It
I
just
mean, last year, there were complications with the flood, and the year before, there was a complication with a contractor maybe, but don't quote me on that. There was another complication 2 years ago.
So we're waiting on the fire department for something, and do we need to do anything else? You sounded like set up a meeting possibly?
Yeah, I'm putting notes in.
Subtask, sorry, I'm gonna be annoying.
If you're ready for me to do that and say yes, I mean, I think it's a pretty high priority, cause we've said we're gonna do it. The landowner who is letting us use the pond, that's how I found out about it, is he came to me and said, I'd really like it done.
Yes,
So, if you guys are cool, I'll try to keep pushing that, envelope.
It should be an easy fix.
It should be, yeah.
should is the operative word.
Fairgrounds, it seems like we took care of tonight.
Yep.
Well.
Well, we took a next step,
We started it.
yeah.
I mean, just real quick, what is the next thing that we have to push out from our end, besides the Conservation Commission working on the RFP and,
I think that's it, the
so we're
RFP
just
goes
gonna
out.
wait, we're gonna wait for that.
Yeah,
We'll get a proposal and they'll give a recommendation for us to get into a contract with a consultant. A lot of the work is gonna be on the forest side of things, as we talked about, but it'll be an interesting conversation about the fairgrounds.
So is
Yeah,
that?
I
go ahead.
think that we did kind of punt it a little bit, Brian, in terms of whether we're gonna look into a 10-year contract, how we're gonna deal with the cows. And I'm not quite sure where we are with that.
So it's almost like waiting to hear
Was-
that from your meeting with Hadley.
Yeah, I mean, I after the conversation we had, and I think Josh made a good point that there might be other options for the fencing. But I would feel really badly locking it up for 10 years without having a conversation with public
I
input.
agree.
Also, for the record, I misspoke earlier. I didn't mean the wastewater project. I meant the Irisville master planning, because that is contingent on the wastewater project, but like the master planning, there was a version of that that happened over 10 years ago. So I'm sorry.
That makes sense.
We've been doing Irisville master planning since I think the 70s.
Well, that's what I meant, is that sometimes it takes a little while, but I'm on board with what folks think.
Well, an electric fence isn't gonna be that expensive.
No.
Yeah.
How long is it? Do we know the length?
Well, it's I don't know, it's,
I mean, an
Several
electric
hundred
fence
yards.
is not
doing
that
math right now.
expensive. I understand Hadley's concern. It is an expense.
yeah, and he
But we're
did,
not talking
he
about
never
that.
asked for 10 years,
Yeah,
He
we're
was
not
just
talking
like-
about tens of thousands of dollars.
yeah,
Right.
okay. I don't know what the compile and understand the system for town easements is.
That was in the Excel sheet. And I honestly cannot say I know what it means either. But I moved it over from the Excel sheet, and it probably meant something to a previous administrator maybe.
I could,
I mean,
I
I
could
could- yeah, go
understand the,
I could imagine someone asking us, hey, what easements does the town have, or easements on town land, that might be it also, I don't know.
I think also like, well, one example, I think that's right, is like the Pocket Park and that path right there that we didn't know anything about, like, you know, we didn't know that there was an easement that we would, you know, take care of that path to Pocket Park next to Scragg and Row and Twisted Halo. And so we didn't know when that happened, when they reached out and said, who's in charge of this path? And it took them bringing the documents to us to say, oh, it is our responsibility, even though there was no record of it that I knew of. So just in terms of what Dave talks about, just that institutional knowledge, so that, you know, whoever's here knows about it. How do we record those easements and those contracts so that
That would be a hard one to compile.
it seems to be, but it
Well,
would be
if-
nice if there was a way to do it.
Well, if nothing else, I think we're expecting, hopefully, to be signing easements with a lot of people soon, and it would be,
Totally.
hopefully. So it'd be great to have like a way that we've decided we want to keep track of it, so that
Yep.
when something like a pocket park comes up and we're like, oh, hey, surprise, we have an easement
It's all
that
recorded
we
in
didn't
the
know
land
about,
records.
we have sorry, say that again?
It's all recorded in the land records.
You gotta know
Right.
what property to look for.
Exactly.
I mean, there's
That's what
two
I'm saying.
questions, there's town easements where we have an easement on somebody else's
Private land,
property,
yeah.
and then there's the town that we own, the property that we own that has an easement held by like the Vermont Land Trust or somebody else.
Yeah.
Both of which.
I
we should know
am
about.
starting to, like, a couple have come to me that I have made a spot on the H drive that, you know, clearly identifies them. And I'll keep building that as something comes to my attention. Like, I just scanned them in and added it. And so that might be the path forward. When something comes to us, we make sure we record it and store it in the server.
You know where this came from was Hastings Road and Blue Ledges,
Oh, yep.
yeah, where we have rights to trails that, it's complicated,
Yep.
that's where that came from. And that's still being resolved as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I think York's method of tracking it is the best we can do.
Yeah,
Okay, then I'll just keep doing that. And
So we can mark
when
this
they
as
come to our
low.
attention, we'll make sure we save it.
roads,
Roads.
transportation.
We should have some.
So is the municipal road general permit in there?
Can you say that again, Larissa? I missed
The
it.
thing you submitted,
that-
yeah.
The municipal roads general permit that we have to comply with by October of 2027.
we need to check in with Josh about that. They have been attending to that in the past, I'm not sure what the work plan has been lately. So that's funding, we're subject to a water quality permit, a municipal general permit for runoff from our roads. We get state funding to do ditch work and all that kind of stuff. that we're required to do by the state.
Yeah, I think
We
that's
also
a
have to
great
like
call.
inventory things, I think.
Which we put in the budget this year.
Yeah, but that's a great call to add that here, and that would be a subtask, is like, we have to
Yeah.
update the 5-year study year plan or inventory, I think is coming up.
I'm sorry,
In
inventory
2026.
of culverts?
Um,
Inventory of-
no, it's like,
Inventory of,
it's,
Sorry, I think and maybe inventory isn't the right word. I vaguely remember them walking us through the process at the round table that I went to.
Yeah,
With
you sent a whole email about it, so.
V-Trans, yeah.
yeah, we've reviewed the plan in prior select board meetings, it's been a while, but it's like almost like every road section and its vulnerability to flooding.
okay,
And-
okay,
and
yep,
ro- and
okay.
sediment.
It classifies
gotcha.
all the roads, and we have to kind of bring the roads
have to
up
walk
the
around and, like, report
classifications
Gotcha,
required
okay,
in
okay,
a
now I know what we're talking, okay,
timeframe.
yep.
And then the road crew has to, when they like go in and do stone lining of ditches, need to document the coordinates of what they did. So that's, you got that, York?
Clear as-
I'll probably watch the video, I'll probably watch the video and get it later, like,
Okay.
later.
Was approved.
So I'll be honest, Monday is not letting me access some of the features. It won't let me do timeline and things like that. So I'm not gonna be able to do some of the things here.
It should be letting you do it, you're a co-owner.
Well, that's an issue to resolve outside of this, but I can't run point the way that I was until a moment ago.
If we're just talking high level first, before we get into the detail of any of these, what I would love to see added would be a paving plan. We have kind of a culvert review and plan. I think we need the same for paving. Some of that's covered in the capital improvement plan budget, but only like the near-term stuff. And in speaking with Josh and Charlie during the last budget cycle, like, they have a longer plan in their heads of, oh yeah, that road was last resurfaced 10 years ago, it's gonna need it.
Out of their heads.
But we need
Yeah.
to get it out of their heads.
That sounds like the next step.
Yeah. And really, that's the same with, to me, the very similar exercise to the culvert review and plan is just
Yeah.
having an inventory of the culverts and when they've been replaced and.
Well, actually, there is such an inventory, and it's maintained by the state. Alice has been schooling me on this whole thing, and there's an assessment on every culvert too. I guess my question is,
Cool.
yeah, is our road crew accessing that assessment and utilizing it?
Yeah.
I don't know either, but it's there, it's meant to be used by us, and we gotta look into it.
Yeah.
I've talked about it with Josh and Charlie, just mentioned when we've talked about culverts, which we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
And so they're aware it's there, and how much they use it, it's a little unclear. And we're kind of working on reevaluating the culvert plan, partially because butternut, and just in terms of how do you come up with a priority list. A culvert may be worse, you know, throughout the town, that's identified needing to be replaced, but the consequences of that failing may be less than another culvert, for example. And so trying to make sure our priority list is adequate, you know, weighing all the costs and, you know, what it would look like if they fail.
I'm also not sure where this would live, if anywhere, but I remember Fred mentioned, maybe it was last year, that especially now that they're starting to mowing the sides of the roads, that the debris from the mowing tends to then plug up culverts. Is that correct? And I don't know if we
That's a
have any
practice.
way of sort of helping prevent a problem before it becomes a problem as part of the mowing process. I realize that's more work for the road crew. I don't know what next steps would be for that. I just remember you'd flagged that before, Fred.
I don't, now that they're mowing, I'll have to take a look at what they're doing, but what some towns have done is they take their mower and set it horizontally and go through and trim trees and brush.
Yeah,
That gets into the ditch when there's a big event, big water event, that flushes right to the culvert and plugs it. So it's a practice that we need. I'm not saying that our crew is doing that, but it's something we should be aware of, and if that is a malpractice, we ought to look into it.
Yeah, and private culverts, the landowner should be looking in there and clearing them out, from time to time, but are we doing that for town culverts?
yeah, and the answer is yes.
Okay, yeah, then, great.
I mean, Josh has a plan for culvert cleanouts. I think he does a big culvert cleanout maybe even twice a year. And he's very aware of culverts and protecting that asset. But with that said, it's a good question, just, to get down to the nitty gritty. When you're doing this, are you aware? And just asking the question, which I think is a valid question.
I certainly as a private homeowner don't know what the best practices are for small culverts that we own privately, and that I don't know if that's
Culvert
something.
education class.
Thank you, that's just
Yes,
what I was going to say.
exactly.
We need some outreach and let people know, one, the culvert at the end of their driveway, they own.
Yep,
And it behooves them to make sure that it's cleared
yep, I know
and
Ira
maintained.
from, the River folks does that from time to time, telling people about that, but. All right, which one are we on? Just, I got
think
lost.
we're kind of all over roads and transportation. I think we've decided that Meadow Road Bridge is a high priority. We've added the paving plan to the culvert reviewing plan.
Can someone go get Fern, please?
We haven't discussed Route 117, which is in the works in V-Trans hands, and they should be reaching out to us this fall. Covered bridge height restriction, we are waiting for at least one option from Miles. Have you made any additional progress on electronic?
That's going to be involved.
Yeah.
So you're waiting for more information or reaching out to folks on that?
No,
Okay.
being told to go ahead. Probably an RFP would need to be generated.
So it sounds
There are
like,
people-
sounds like the subtask could be more research to be done and
Yeah.
potential RFP.
Yeah, the technology is there. It can be done. I'd be interested in hearing what Miles has to say first. I would think we'd have to do some RFPs to have someone scope it out completely. The problem is where do you put the sensors? Are they going to be on private buildings? How do you put the sensors in? So we need, a company that's, and there are companies that can do this, to advise us.
So we'll first hear from Miles. And then decide whether it might be such a great proposal that we just want to go ahead and do it, or you might
Yeah.
say, no,
Let's.
it's a little intrusive, let's look at some options.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've circled back with Miles twice, but, and I appreciate these things take time, but maybe I'll just send a little check-in email. I took a note to just check in and say, hey, Miles, and see
So-
how that's going.
We putting medium on those, York?
Sure.
And then the one that we haven't discussed is Class 4 roads. I'm personally, I'm not seeing that as a super high priority.
Yeah.
Same.
I've actually talked to Josh. We had the request for Dana Hill Road. He said he would get some material and some minor improvements up there. And then he talked about maybe next year doing something a little bit more up there in our budget. It might involve a contractor. I had a call from somebody about Palmer Hill Road, which has become pretty impassable. There is at least one camp up there, and Josh said he would get that on his list. And then there's I always go back and forth whether it's the Reed Road or the Ronk Road, the road to the town well. also needs access.
Reed.
Reed Road.
And that is on Josh's radar, it's on his to-do list.
Yeah, I saw that. And then,
We talked about it this morning. I'll leave it at that.
and then there's Bowen Road, which seems to be fine, that we have a maintenance agreement for that, that's a little bit more thought out than others. And then Ralston Road is practically a class 3 road, it's just not, it's built to class 4 standards, but we maintain it for winter travel. And there's probably a handful of other ones, other class 4 roads. So, I was
Low.
low. Okay.
Oh,
And culvert review and plan is also low, is that right, or medium?
No, I think
I
that's,
think that one's,
I,
I think it's in the works.
That's
I think it's
okay.
higher.
High, great.
Yeah.
I think given the kind of flood recurrence and flood resiliency questions and
yeah.
stuff.
Has
that's
anyone
just
else
higher.
been to
Exactly.
Butternut Hill? I have not yet.
I have.
I
It
need to-
needs to be armored, it needs some rock put in there.
Josh and I are actively working on a culvert plan, and
thank you.
I think maybe we'll even come to the select board the first meeting in July with, you know, and basically a request, in terms of replacing that culvert, depending on what we, you know, with the research of how the culvert is, and even more extensive work, or maybe going upstream a little bit.
Thanks.
Okay. So let's take a time check. How do folks feel about, it's 8:20? Do you want to continue moving through the plan?
I'm good.
Good to keep going or good?
Charge.
Good to go.
That could go either way.
Out the door.
Grant administration.
Do you want me to just
Yeah.
mention ARPA funds, Brian,
Yeah.
and where we're at with it? Or have we done that in the past?
No, I guess the issue, it has been confusing that the town has satisfied what we need to do for the ARPA funds that we did not allocate to other entities, right? That keeps coming back and forth.
I mean, essentially, we earmarked all the dollars, all the ARPA dollars for organizations in town. Some of those have been spent, some have not been spent. In order for them to be spent, the organization has to do the work, and then they say, here's the work, it's done, and then we reimburse them. There's in the tens of thousands of dollars that have not been spent. Sandy was under the understanding that the end of this year, as in December 31st, 2025, those need to be expended. And again, I think there's about maybe $50,000 with a good number of projects left. Steve, Sandy and I talked about it, and then Brian, Larissa and I just mentioned it. You know, is there a deadline that was not in the contract, for when cause Sandy wants the money spent when ARPA tells us the money's supposed to be spent. So in order to do that, we can't wait till, if it's December 31st for Neck of the Woods or the schools, to not request the funding, request their money that was agreed upon if they haven't done the project. Is there a date that we create, a deadline for them to have spent those funds? Because if they don't, I would like to have time for the select board or some committee to say, okay, we have this amount of money that should be spent somewhere else by December 31st.
Yeah, that should be established, we need to establish.
Yeah, can we put that as high, and can you maybe write a little document that summarizes the problem and what we need to find out?
Yes,
Well, it sounds like we need to write a letter to all those who've not spent the money.
Yeah,
that is what I would like to
So
do, but I
categorize,
couldn't.
we need to
without
categorize
your
who,
advice.
yeah,
but I don't think Sandy's correct. That, I mean,
I agree with that.
I just Googled it, recipients must obligate the funds by December 31, 2024, and spend them by December 31, 2026.
Yeah, so I would like to get all that straight and
Okay.
then find out who still needs to spend the,
Yeah.
Well, we still should set it at a date.
We should say, yeah,
We still
Yeah.
should do that,
yeah,
to give us time,
just get a status at least.
to
Yeah.
give us time spend the money ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
We
but
don't
yes,
wanna
you're
lose
right, I mean, we need, if it's August, some people have said it's next August. So over a year from now, maybe it's in a whole nother December from now. And then from that, we can set a date to make sure that each organization knows, and I think that would be respectful of us to do.
Yeah.
Question on this section, grant administration, is that implying kind of existing, how we administer existing grants, or where would new grants? Would that fall into this, like applying for new grants, would that fall into this section as well, or somewhere else?
I'm sorry, I missed that, I was taking notes, Josh, I'm sorry.
Would application for new grants fall under this category of grant
Yep.
administration?
Potentially, yeah, I mean, it probably fits in more than one spot, you're probably right, I mean, keeping our eyes open on grants, and then maybe under road saying, we know there's a road grant, you know, a bridge grant that is available, so we put it there also, but yeah, I think that would be appropriate.
So like grant application and administration or something like that.
Yeah, I would suggest that, and if in practice it turns out it's redundant, because we already put that as a subtask under roads or something, fine, but just to make sure we, like in my limited understanding, on the roads, we can get those paving grants every couple of years. We're expending one now, or spending one down now that we received 2 or 3 years ago. We should be applying for another one now for, whatever's next on the list.
No, I think that this is a good, I think, yeah, I see what you mean.
And we actually have some of those future grants baked into the SIP plan, and
Yeah.
if we don't get them, that comes out of our pocket or the taxpayers' pocket, or we don't do the project.
So is that a new item, just kind of,
Grant
Yeah, I added it
opportunities.
as a
grant
new
opp-
item.
Yeah, grant opportunities, because there's also culvert grants that the state has.
That we have not yet applied for, or that we've already received and need to administer.
I don't think we've received any that I'm not aware of any, but just that we should always be aware of opportunities and take advantage of them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that was my old job at National League of Cities partially, and it was really fun, and now I don't have time to do it as much.
Yeah, this was gonna be a thing in my roundtable, but at the MRVPD steering committee meeting, they always do an excellent job of outlining everything that's available. And I can try to download that in some way to everybody, or, it could be during a roundtable. But the one example I was gonna bring up is there's private funding for, or there's funding for private projects, planning, and I just had it up right here, but I won't go into it right now, but making sure that town residents know about that. Obviously that's different, that's not our responsibility, but it might be something that we wanna do, but it's lower priority than stuff we have to do ourselves.
And Dave, you can always, if you think anything like that is good for the community or for the whole select board, if I'm understanding you correctly, you can always forward those to me and get as specific as you want, what you think is worth sharing, and we can just put it, if nothing else, in the meeting packet. And which could be helpful for the community.
Yeah, I had some, we can go over this later, but I think a couple meetings ago, we talked about the emergency plan being accessible via the website, or
Yeah.
what, an update section of, hey, here's what to do, if things are happening, and, some other potential communication strategies around, here's some things to know about that's happening in town besides, I don't know how many people read the minutes of the select board meetings carefully.
I could guess.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
I could also
I
make a
think you're
guess.
right.
I could also
Fred
make a
and
guess.
I- Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good, yeah, just to have a more accessible communication strategy
Yes,
to residents
yes.
for things that would be very helpful to them when they're pursuing projects or wanna know, possibilities.
Well, I think it was Valerie, when she was town administrator, used to put in a blurb right in the Valley Reporter. Select board talked about this, decided this, and this. A couple paragraphs, really fast.
Waitsfield notes.
Waitsfield notes, is that what you call them? Yeah. Now, I thought that was very valuable, and I wish we could reinstitute
Yeah, we could do a
that
newsletter,
or
we could do the
something.
reporter, we could do a page on the website of important updates, we could do.
I don't think we communicate well with our people.
I agree with that. Or I think there are things we can do
To improve.
to improve, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we have.
With that, I will say I wrote a letter because there's so much that's going on, and I sent it to Lisa Loomis a couple weeks ago, and she didn't want to summarize it or do it. It was talking about the paving and just the road crew and responding to a bunch of questions that we had gotten. Anyway, she did not want to print it, so
Yeah, I would be in favor of taking it out from the gatekeeper of the Valley Reporter unless we can come to an agreement with them on what the format and size
Yep.
should be every week.
If she doesn't wanna do front porch forum, we'll probably take it.
Definitely.
Well, the Valley Reporter is our newspaper of record.
A record, correct?
I would like to use them if we can.
Yep. We need to just come to a understanding with her,
Understand
yeah.
what best works for them
Yep.
and us. Yeah.
I mean, this is, I will say the Text My Gov, which we haven't talked about in months, but this is one of the reasons I kind of thought Text My Gov was quite good. And this is just one of many examples, that could be really handy, just for little updates, and people say, do we wanna get this update or not? Just as a caveat to this conversation,
Yep.
it would be a good tool,
So I'm not,
Or multiple ways of
To-
getting it out.
if I could just propose we throw in town operations, like town communications, to residents as a item, and then we put it as low or medium and talk about it at some point.
I think it's super
Yes.
important, I'm with you 100%,
I-
where would you like it to go?
I
Under
think
what
in
section?
town
Town
operations.
operations.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it's a high priority.
Yeah.
It's important that we communicate with our people.
What's the status of the RRFP B?
wait, what's
And
the
what
status
does,
of
and
what?
what does RRFP stand for?
I'm sorry, I'm still doing.
Oh, sorry, hold on, yep.
The RRFB, I don't know what it stands for.
Flashing.
Rapid
But it's-
yeah.
it's
something,
The flashing
flashing.
Yeah.
Oh, we
Flashing
ordered,
beacon.
Flashing red
ordered,
thing.
there's two things, so we ordered the one, I haven't heard, but it's ordered. I have a note out and not getting great response from the one installation company in Burlington-ish, about what it would cost to install it. Technically, the road crew can't do it, but, I think you guys were interested in seeing what it would cost to have it installed by installer. And we have a meeting with the Vermont Road, about the new site by Lawson's, that crosswalk, cause there should be enough grant funds to cover two. And then making sure that we have the appropriate spot and that permit is approved, an 1111 permit. To then come to the select board to say, yes, it's approved, would you like to, basically order another RFB for that spot?
So the current pending subtask is you're waiting to hear something, or you still have to push something out?
I'm waiting to hear,
Okay.
really. And not only waiting to hear, there are meetings, there's a meeting scheduled, for the potential new site for the RFB.
I've been very disappointed with how long this whole process has taken and the cost, and we still don't have it installed.
Well,
If we-
I can't speak to
Well,
anything before I came
if
on,
we're-
but
Exactly. We'll get this new one by this school put in. But I'd like us to look at other ways of flagging crosswalks than using this RRFP. I noticed over in Middlebury that they have a canister next to the crosswalk with flags that you pick up and carry across and deposit in the canister on the other side of the
The
road.
same in Jackson, Wyoming,
Yeah, I've seen them in Florida too.
yeah. Orange
I-
flags.
it's-
yeah.
All we'd have to do is get the permit from the state to have some flagging there, and you can build these for a couple $100, and we could have them installed in less time it's taken me to talk about it.
It's a great call. I bet that's why some of these towns do it, is because it's low
I mean, this is
It's so
laborious.
bloody.
This to get this, we should have had this done by the school some time ago. And we've been like 3 years on this
Yeah.
project, and we still don't have it installed. I
Yeah,
I don't
well,
wanna,
yeah,
I don't wanna
it's-
see us repeat this all over again up
Yeah.
by Lawson's. I agree we need something there, but this RRFP, I don't think, or B is,
Well, I think
My little
once the
rant for the
RFP
day.
goes in,
Or
it
second.
should be great, because A, the crosswalks aren't painted, or barely painted, because they haven't been painted in a couple of years, by the state. And it will make it very visible for those that wanna cross, the road. But yeah, I already added other ways to ensure the crosswalks are safe, and brainstorm and come up with, new means to do that, and, I'm certainly fully supportive of that.
I will say, walking in the village a lot, drivers have gotten better over the years, although I still wouldn't walk in front of a moving car.
Yeah, it's hit or miss for sure.
Yeah.
The
Especially
number
with
of
kids.
folks that it has, well, it's not in the middle of town, but I do think that one thing, well, I'll mention this in the roundtable, but a probably predictable consequence of us widening the road on Bridge Street is that people are going a lot faster on the new pavement leading up to East Warren Road.
And we
Um,
really need to stripe it, so we stripe narrow lanes.
Yeah.
The state started to do several years ago, and that did have an impact on slowing traffic.
Did it? Okay,
Yeah.
because I was gonna say there definitely needs to be just psychologically something visual
Yeah.
that cues drivers to feel more constrained, whether that's trees or bollards or
Yeah.
physical something, but I mean stripes sounds like a great place to start.
I have not heard the timeline, because I don't think Josh knows it yet, but Josh is working actively on the striping, of the new pavement.
We might wanna talk about, painting the wide shoulder green or something different to differentiate.
It's interesting.
I remember I read
Are you
a book
allowed- is that
a
legal?
while ago called Traffic, which was really cool. Just had all these ideas in it.
they've got them down in South Burlington, I know. Taps Corners, they have them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and, it's our road. Bethel, Maine, in their village, they had different artists both paint their crosswalks. So everyone is different and very colorful, it's
Yeah.
very cool, but I could never imagine V-Trans would go for that. So, planning projects? We've got wastewater,
Big couple weeks for that, right?
yeah, we're waiting to hear a lot, right?
Yes.
Well, I have a lot of bad news for that, but I just didn't wanna talk about it, so.
Okay,
Cause I got a phone call today, and we did not get the BCDP grant. I don't think we really expected to, judge, based on their questions. They really feel like their biggest response was the whole board feels like there should be other funding out there that would fund this, and that shouldn't be them. And I was like, well, if you know of any funding, that would be great, but let us know. And Julie was like, oh, well,
If you know of this ample funding.
yeah, she's like, oh, well, and Julia's fantastic. She was very helpful during the proposal process. And she's like, well, I will talk to the board and see if they had in mind, like, who they were thinking about. And she did not close the door on applying next year. There are very little funds, for it this year. There were a lot of requests. They funded 3 and not fully. They only partially funded 3. And we also did not get the, I think I heard that on Friday. We did not get the Catalyst grant with Northern Borders.
Rural development, wasn't
So
that,
those, sorry, I missed that.
rural development, wasn't that one of our major grant
That one,
sources?
USDA?
Yeah, we're waiting on
USDA.
USDA. USDA is going to give us a package, and we're anticipating hearing from USDA any week.
Okay.
Should this is your territory, but should we update USDA with that or not?
Yeah, it's one of the reasons.
I think they
we-
actually know, but yes, that is going to happen. I mean, this just happened today. I sent a text to Josh Schwartz and JB, because we were the three that worked a lot on it. And, you know, we just need some time to grieve. And then, yes, you're right. We'll circle back with USDA.
Yeah, they want to be kind of last money in, they call it. So
Yep.
they've been holding off, waiting to see what we get from other sources, which allows them to kind of finalize their package.
And I'll add, I don't remember if I brought this up last time, I asked Robin, who, you know, is so familiar with all of this funding, partially because of the water, to work on some numbers, and he did, and sent me an Excel sheet that I'm gonna have to probably spend a few years understanding. So, I
About
think this is like, an Excel sheet in terms of numbers for the wastewater project. And I was kind of joking, but I said it's gonna take me a few years to understand fully. So, but that's, you know, just in terms of the wastewater project, there's still things happening, and, Robin was, in short, optimistic. Even though we've heard some bad news, I think.
So a subtask not related to the bit of financial package that I don't think we've moved forward on was, at some point there was discussion of like having a workshop to look at sort of the leftover capacity that is not already
Yeah, that's,
allocated,
yes.
and how the select board wants to handle allocating additional
Yep.
capacity.
That should be a subtask, is scheduling those sessions with Josh and other folks that need to be there.
Yeah, and there's,
Well,
We lost York.
oh, there you are.
We lost
You're
you for
back.
about 10 seconds there.
partially is scheduling an all funders meeting, that's one of them. If you can still hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
And then, but some of this is just taking time, and we've been stalling on purpose. But yeah, scheduling a meeting with the select board for numerous policy questions also needs to happen. August or September, is the, I'd say probably date for that.
Thanks for putting that in.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me at it, you're right.
Any other thoughts on their planning projects?
Irisville master planning, should we put is there anything that we need to schedule or push out? Or are we medium, low?
I think that it's moving along.
It's moving along without our,
Yeah.
I think the priority should really be our,
Yes,
Um,
yes.
Yeah,
so, of course, it's a high priority, but.
so it's gonna be presented to us at some point.
Okay.
And it is, you know, in some respects, some aspects of it are tied to the wastewater.
Yep.
Anything else? So again, I wanna do a time check. We do have an executive session.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm beginning to,
I'd be in favor of pausing this.
And finishing at the next
Yep.
meeting?
Yep.
Yeah,
That's great, so we're at ordinances and policies.
yep, and I think we have some stuff to talk about there.
Okay.
So we did agree to put select board roundtable and town administrator's report before the consent agenda, correct?
I
Yes,
believe so.
yeah, I'm sorry I missed that, I didn't include it.
Yeah, after work plan. Is all that I, in my notes.
So, anybody have anything for select board roundtable?
The emergency management team got together and did a review of the May 17th flood and how we responded to that. I thought it was pretty fruitful. We came up with some ideas to make our response more effective, more efficient. I think it's quite valuable. Personally, I'm very pleased to see so many more people involved in emergency management during an event like May 17th. That was very heartening for me.
Yeah, and I thought it was a good meeting too, that so it was, Claire did a good job, everybody did a good job, and I think it'll be better coordinated next time.
Yeah, yeah, we clarified things and, yep.
Anybody, anything else, select board roundtable?
Got my 2 cents in about the wider road, meaning that people are going a lot faster. I'm good.
And I took notes there's a lot of notes from that work plan. And I have that on to talk to Josh about just when we look into striping, because, so I have a note to ask Josh about that.
Yep, town comms was mine, and I dealt with that.
York, do you have anything to add for your administrator's report?
I don't know, let me look. I'll just add that trying to pack up a house and there's so many things happening in Waitsfield, it's really hard to not work full time. I am doing my best and semi keeping up. Sorry.
We got those shelves cleared behind you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple
did it
items.
today.
I'd also just like to make a note of the fact that we're lucky that, well, you've taken vacation times in which you're not fully on vacation, and while that has been wonderful, I don't think that well, we've been lucky, that I don't think that should be the thing that we expect. I would love for people to actually be able to go on vacation and fully be on vacation, and I don't think the way that things are structured right now that is possible, so I just want to flag that.
I don't know how you guys did it without an administrator for so long. I literally don't get it. If I go 4 hours without checking my email, it's like mayhem. And
Oh, no.
there's just a lot going on, which is all mostly exciting. But yeah, the number of documents I have to review and sign are numerous.
I've been setting
but
up in the
everything's
future how we do it, where he can
Yeah.
Yeah.
go to the woods for a week and we cannot miss important things, I think is a.
I did talk to Josh again after our last meeting about his vacation. He's like, no one will be calling me. He said again.
I told him to turn his phone off,
Oh, well, that's good.
unless there's a flood.
I'm not sure he's coming back. He said Taylor knows what to do. That was his
That's
response.
going to be my question. Is there a second?
Yeah.
He said Taylor knows what to do.
There we go.
Okay, I did have something.
Is there anything about the wood for good, firewood?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Something you
You're
wanted to
right.
mention?
Thank you, Larissa.
Oh, did you switch in?
I would like to mention it. So Eric Axelrod reached out to me, and he is a representative for this organization, Wood for Good. He works with multiple towns throughout Vermont. He referenced St. Albans. Essentially, what he's looking for is if there's a small spot of land, preferably near the town garage, where they can clear it. It could be a really lousy site. They can clear it and they'll even pave it if it needs to be paved. To have wood, to give out to the community. Brian said that he thinks there's someone in town that already does it, so maybe it's worth circling them in and see if this could be a good collaboration, that they can use each other, and just offer more, or if it's not necessary. I think their research shows that having something Bad River Valley would be good. And I guess basically what I'm looking for from the select board is this something okay to move forward with in terms of just having Eric visit with Josh and look and see if there is a site that maybe we could recommend to the select board that could work? Does that make sense?
To me anyway, with the caveat you said already of, there is Ned.
Ned Kelly.
Ned Kelly, thank you. Dirty Paws CSA, he's set up there before.
Yeah, so there is a group already doing it, and I don't know how organized they are, how broadly that goes, but we should check in with them first and see, if, as you said, if there's coordination.
And this
But
actually.
what's the name of them, Chach? Can you say that again?
Ned Kelly, is
Yes.
that the name?
Yes, yes.
He lives in Facein.
He was profiled in the Valley Reporter a few weeks ago.
That's right.
Okay.
And just with this conversation about town property too, just wanted to loop back to the presentation by Aaron Shea.
Me too.
And I thought that, I talked to Josh in New York about this, that we ought to do, while the days are still long, a site visit to the gravel pit.
Yeah.
And look at that property, and I don't think anybody's seen the gravel pit. I haven't seen it since it was permitted.
Brian, you wanna do that before a select board meeting, like when we visited the garage?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
what do you
Okay.
think?
Can you put that in planning projects?
That's
Yeah.
pretty good,
Town property,
yeah.
site visit.
Yeah. So that, and just another update on town property. The preliminary plans for the Farley Park are moving along. They've been input from the Conservation Commission, and there's gonna be a plan coming to the board at some point in the next 2 months. Might be another site visit we wanna go on. So, is that it for reports?
I guess my thought on Wood for Good at the town garage, I guess I don't mind if it does not interfere with operations there.
Yeah, I mean, this would all
Yeah,
be, this original.
I don't
meeting
want
would be-
anything to hamper the operations there.
Yeah, this has many caveats.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically saying, let's talk to Ned Kelly, let's see if there's a need, see if this is a good opportunity to collaborate, partner. And then just see if it's possible that there would be a site that would not, infringe on the road crew's work. And, there's still a lot of questions, and that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think there are questions worth asking, and we're sort of starting communications.
And apologies, but this jogged my memory, just from the MRVB, the Planning Steering Committee meeting. CRV, Conservation, Recreation, and Visioning is going to present to us at some point, I think.
Oh.
We discussed, their work, and, I don't know whether that goes under natural resources or conservation, but basically best practices for the town potentially for education of private landowners on certain things, like construction of trails and things like that. So,
I went to their thing at American Flatbread and it was great
yep, so
when they, the big reveal. And I'm looking forward to them coming and the town asking more specific questions about what that means for the town and how we can assist in moving forward. And it was cool.
yep, I just wanna have that captured somewhere, that they wanna talk to us.
So we pulled the minutes off the agenda, off the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Your request, Fred?
Yeah, paragraph 7, line 135. I desire to add, Mr. Messer expressed opposition to the proposed new town tax.
Fine by me.
We did discuss it.
Yep.
We did have a
Did
spirited
you express your
discussion.
opposition?
I'd like it so noted.
And I expect
I mean,
tonight's meeting will reflect a motion that did not go to a vote.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I was trying to find the spot. I can go back and watch the video later. Did you want something changed in the minutes from June 9th?
No, I asked that a sentence be added, Mr. Messer expressed opposition to the proposed new town tax.
Well,
I'd say
I
it's
would-
not
I would-
proposed,
I would
there
actually
is
say
no
that there was
proposed
no
new
proposed
town
new
tax.
tax. So maybe
We
you,
talked about, you
we
mentioned
talked
a lot.
about possibilities, but nothing
Yeah.
was proposed.
Yeah, there was no
We
proposal.
proposed options to talk about. There was no proposed town tax. So
That was not what I understood you to say.
I said that I want to explore a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't say, I haven't made up my mind on it yet.
But we spoke specifically about a local option.
How about if Mr. Messer expressed opposition to any new town tax?
Any
I'm good
potential.
with that.
Okay,
I'm good with that.
okay. Did you get that?
No, because I missed when he said it was, but I have it in the video and I will go back in the video and then before I put them in as final, I'll fix that.
You want to just read the line number again
Yeah,
for
one-
York?
Yeah, line number 135, paragraph 7, work plan review.
Okay, thank you. 135. Thank you.
Okay. And then, so we have a consent agenda that, oh wait, so do we have a motion on the minutes as amended?
I would move that we adopt the minutes as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now we have a consent agenda that includes warrants and bills, and 2 liquor licenses. Is there a motion on that?
Move to advance the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I,
And York, we need an executive session for,
We technically can wait because I have not received. We can go into executive session to kind of cover a little bit of the cyber. And which we're allowed to by the new open meeting laws, might I add. But if you'd like, we can wait 2 weeks because I'm still waiting to hear back from some firms on the questions that I had. So that, I'll leave that to you. We can go into it, but there won't be tons to discuss until I get more answers to my questions.
why don't we wait till there's more answers?
That's fine.
yeah, that sounds like the best use of time.
So
Okay.
that should be that.
Move to adjourn.
That's that.
Second?
Second.
There was
Non-debatable?
hesitation.
All in
looking
Giving
at
favor?
Josh.
other people a chance, I
Oh
appreciate
my,
that.
you want to keep going?
Josh wants another 15 minutes. All in favor?
More subtasks.
Aye.
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 Great, thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank
Good
you
luck, York.
for
Good luck,
being
York.
here.
You got this, York, when are you back,
Yeah.
York?
Noam and I will be driving in probably Sunday.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
Yep, so I'll see you all next week.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
You'll be here for the 4th, that's the whole thing.